Okay, so today we continue from where we stopped last time. We are able to work on this message components for no definition and for the error 404 page. And currently here I'm on a page that we don't know about, and that's the reason why it's showing this message. And again, we incorporated dark and light theme into the system. Currently, it's in dark theme, and once this thing is clicked, it took you back to the light theme. And as you can see, the color changes. Thanks to Tailwind, we are able to do this thing easily without doing a lot of CSS work. So today, we are going to start with this, our drop down. Then after that, we'll be moving into the search component. So these are the two things that we're going to be working on today. We have this drop down that we need to work on to select the font. And based on the font that you pick here, it's going to change entire text that we have on the page. So it's going to change the font. So when it is in sans serif, this is what we're going to have. Let me go there, the font. So as you can see, we have the sans serif font. We have the serif. As you can see that the text is quite different. The font there is not the same thing as the first one. And at the same time, we have the mono. Again, too, all the text has been changed. So we need to do this today by building this, our drop down. I told you we are not going to be doing too much of the drop down. If you want a perfect drop down, you can use external UI library that's already take care of our keyboard interaction and a lot of things there. So we don't need to waste time on that part because we still have a lot of things to do in the application there. But in our next stuff that we're going to be working on, we're not going to be creating all this thing from scratch. We're going to be using the UI library to simplify the process of us building our application. So instead of us doing it by ourselves, we just use a UI library, and anywhere we need to customize it, we're going to do that. Not that we'll be building the stuff from scratch, which is something that I showed to you last time there. So let's see how can we build this drop down. The simple, what we need to do here is to have this kind of like a button here, or we can have a container, and that container is going to be a button since it's something that is clickable. And once this thing is clicked, it's going to bring out this item, which is going to slide from the top to this side. And when the stuff is in closed mode, then it goes back up, and it doesn't show on the screen to the user there. So we need to put all the necessary HTML together in order for us to be able to do this. So I'm going to be putting this in under components. So I'm going to be creating a component, call it dropdown .jsx like this. Then generate the component, and this component we can now import it inside the header. So let me just save this one, go back to the header. So where we need it is this side here. So this drop down, this is where we need to put it. So I'm going to call it drop down like this, which is coming from our component folder there. If you want, you can put this one too in its own file, which is something I'm going to quickly do right now there. So I'm going to create another component known as logo like this, so that we can make that file simple. So RAFCE, this is going to generate what we need. And what I just need to do here is to pass it like this, then go back into the header and just import the logo. And as you can see, things have started getting simple inside this box. Again, is there any other thing I can reduce? I don't think so. Maybe this our toggle that we have there, but for now I won't focus on that. So let's focus on the drop down that we have here. So file, let me save everything so that we can see that everything is still working. We did not change anything, but something is wrong, so it's not showing. Let me see what it's saying. Reference link is not defined. Yeah, because I did not import. Yeah, the link has been is no more being used here. So this is not where we need it. We need it inside the logo. So save, and save this one too. Everything should be working back. So click on the logo. It should redirect us back to the home page, and this one too should still be working because nothing changed at that side. But where we need to work on now is this drop down that we have here. And what did I say we are going to be doing inside the drop down? We are going to have a container which is going to be button. Why am I using button? Because I want this thing to be I'm using correct element. Anything that is clickable and is not a link that takes you from one place to another, you can use button for that. And as you can see here, it's giving us the styling for the button already, but nothing is happening yet because we don't have all the necessary elements to pop out when this thing is open. And we need to keep tracking of whether this thing is open or not by creating a state which is going to be open and set open. So when the stuff is true, it means that we are showing that our drop down, and when it's not true, it means the drop down is not showing. And by default, it's going to be false. But in order for us to see what is going on, I'm going to set it to true. But once we are done, this thing is going to be false because you don't want to show the drop down when the page loads. It's always going to be shown when the user click on it. And again too, we need to be able to toggle it. So if you click, if it is open, then we close it. And if it is a click and it's not open, and it's going to open it. So which means we need to have a toggle to toggle this thing based on whether it is true or false. So yeah, I'm going to be creating a function to do that. So toggle like this, I'm calling it toggle, just like the way we did for the dark mode. And what is it going to have here? What we do is to check whether this thing is open. If it is open, we set it to false. If it's not open, then we set it into true. So we can do it in this long way, or there's a short way of doing it, but I'm going to do it in a more clear sense. So if it is open, that means we need to close it. So what we do here is the set open like this, which is going to be false because it is open. We know that if it is not open, we know that it is closed because there are only two things that can happen here. Is that it is open or it is not open. And when it's not open, what do we want to do? We want to set it to true. So this function is going to be something you can always call anytime the button is clicked. So whether it is open or it's not open, that same function is what we are always going to call. But inside the function is checking whether it is open or not. And based on that, is setting the correct state. So if it is open, it means we want to close it when you click on the button again. And when it is not open, at that point, we need to open the modal because we need to show it. So we need to call this our toggle anytime the button is click there like that. So, but instead of me doing it in this way, that's actually a better way of doing this thing directly. And how can we do it without doing everything at the top? So we can actually call this our set state that we have here. And this set state here is either you pass the value into it like this to update directly, or you want to update the stuff based on the previous state that is here. So you can actually supply a function to it. And this function will return whatever new value that you want to save in the state. And inside this function, you are going to receive the previous value that is there before. So for now, the previous value is going to be true. And whatever you return here, that's what you want to set as the new value. So you can either pass the value directly like this, if you don't depend on what is there before, or you can even do it like this. But this one is long. So instead of me doing it on this different line, I can do the same thing too on one line. Because this one is going to give me the previous value that is there before. And based on the previous value that is there, I'm negating it. Because that's the same thing we are doing here. If it is open, we change it to false. And if it is false, we change it to true. The same thing here too. So whatever that is there before, just negate it. Just normal JavaScript that is there. So if you do not true like this, as you can see, it will give us false. And if you do not false like this, you see that it will give us true. What we are just doing here is just normal JavaScript. So whatever that is there before, it will negate it. If it is true, it will set it to false. If it is false, it will set it to true because it's negating the stuff. But this one looks somehow, and what this one line is doing, you see the same thing as what we have on this line. But this one is more useful anytime you need to depend on the previous state that you have inside that your use state. So once you need to depend on it, and because it's not every time that you want to do all this thing, or there are some places that you want to use the previous value that is there and you are making just changes on this line. But at that point, that doesn't mean you are going to get the value that you change. Like here that we set to true now. After this line, this thing will not give you open here as false. It will never give you. So when you need the previous value that has been set, the recent value that has been set inside that stuff, you can use this function to always get that value. But here, this one might not give us what you need. But for now, we don't need it. But I can go with this simple one or this one that I have here. But any one of them can be used. But I will be going with this one. Let me remove this and go with this simple one for now. So if it is false or if it is true, set it to false. But if it is not, then you set it into true. Both of them will do the same thing. And inside this button, what do we have there? We are going to have two things inside it. So I'll be having this span. Inside this span, that's where we're going to have the text that is going to hold whatever the font that the user picked. So which means we need to keep tracking the current font that the user picked from the list of the options that we are going to have later on. So what are the list of the options? So if you look at the design here, let me move this into side so that we can see the list of all the options that we're going to be rendering later on. So we need const items. So I'm calling it these items here like that. So the first one on the list is this sans serif like this. Then what else do we have there? We have serif, and lastly we have mono. So these are the list of the items we want to display. And as you can see, we need to keep tracking of the one that is selected. So how do we know the one that is selected? We need to have a state for that too. So selected font like this, then set selected font. Based on this one now, we can apply the correct color and at the same time do whatever we need to do based on that state. So this one is going to be use state, and by default it's going to pick the first items that we have there. So that's what it's going to use, because we always want to show the first one that is on the list when the user did not pick anything. We're always going to use the first one on the list. So whatever we put at the first one on the list, that's what I'm setting as my default state. Just like this one that I'm using true as the default state. So here I'm using whatever that is inside this item, the first one there, as the state for that place. And inside this span, that's where we display the selected. So whatever you selected there is going to show inside this box, because once the thing is closed, we need to display the one that is selected, as you can see. So that's where that stuff is going to be. But once you click on it, there is going to be a drop down. So we need to work on this drop down too soon. But for now, inside this span, that's where the selected font is going to be displayed. So let me apply class on this thing too, because we need to apply some classes on the element. So class name, VS Code, what does this? Like that. So going back to the page, we should have that selected displaying for us. As you can see, it's showing sans serif by default. But if I go up and change it to 1, you see that it's going to change the selected to serif. And if it is the other one too, which is the third one, you see that it's going to update it. And that's what is going to be happening later on when you click on any one of them. It will update the selected font and it's going to be displayed here to the user. But after this, we need to have our list, which is that box that we have there. So which is going to be the list of all the options that the user can pick from. So this box is what I'm calling this UL right now. So it is UL that I'm using because it's a list of items, but we are going to style it like a box. So here I'm going to have the li, but I don't just want to type the li directly myself because we already have the list here at the top. We just need to loop through it and we display the stuff, and you know that already. So items, then we map through it, we get the item that we have inside it like that. And what are we returning back? We are returning li. And what's going to happen to the li? We are just displaying the item because we know that it's a string. And again, it's always good that you put the key on this thing, because is a list of items. And again too, I'm using that same item because they are not the same. The texts are actually unique. So sans serif is not the same thing as serif, and it's not the same thing as mono. So it's good for us to use as a key. And we're going to be applying some CSS later on to some of these elements there. So for now, let me just put this class name like this, because we are going to be doing some conditional stuff. So I'm putting it as a backtick so that we can apply our style based on the selected there later on like that. So let me save and go back to the page. This thing is not going to look like what we want, but with the help of our CSS, we are going to make it look like what we want to display on the screen. But going back to the screen, we should have them coming out. This is the selected one, while all this one is now the list. But we don't want this thing to take over the space that is taking over right now. So we need to start applying our positioning property. So with the help of positioning property, we can place element in this parent anywhere we want it to be like that. And how can we do that? I see some other thing that is going on here, but I don't want this button to just be like this. So I'm going to move it out because I don't want it to be clicking anytime I click on this button. Since they are together like this, it's not going to work the way we want it to work correctly. So what I will do here is to create a div. Inside this div is where I'm going to place everything. Then move this one outside of the button so that the clicking of this button doesn't affect what we have here like that. And later on, we can attach the click on this one, which is going to toggle. So this one too, we're going to create a function to set our deselected, or we can set it directly from here when it is clicked. But I always love to move the function outside here so that it is clearer what is going on in the code. So the HTML will be here while the JavaScript are going to be outside. But there is nothing stopping you from defining the function directly inside the onClick. But it's going to take a lot of unnecessary space because there are two things I need to do there, and we're going to get there soon. But first, before I get there, let me move this thing to one side so that we can see what is going on without moving the code around. Yeah, so let me have it like this. So what do we need to do? What we need to do here is to start with the styling. First of all, what I want to do here is that this one is going to be relative. And why do we need to give it relative? What I'm doing here is position relative, which is something I've explained before. When you position a parent as relative, inside that parent, you can position any of its child as absolute. And the calculation of left, right, which is the offset property, are going to be based on that parent. So when I say left for the child, it's going to use the parent left to calculate its offset, because once we position this one as absolute, it will be removed from its original location. And if any of its immediate parents are not positioned apart from static, it's going to use body to be calculating what are there. But I will not be able to move it down to the area that I want easily because I want it to be under this button here. And in order for it to be under the button, we need to be calculating based on this parent. And in order for it to be calculating based on the parent have to be positioned as a relative. And once we position this one as absolute now, and later on we started using our offset, as you can see, it's going to be relative to this parent here, which means here I can do whatever I want with it. But for now, let me use BG. I think the BG is going to be white by default. So padding is going to be 2, but we are not seeing it that this thing is actually having a background of white. Why? Because we need to apply shadow. So we need to apply shadow. So let me apply shadow medium. As you can see, it's there, but I think it's more than that. Let me apply shadow large to the stuff, or we can create our own shadow by ourselves in Tailwind. Tailwind actually allow us to kind of update a system there. So as you can see, the way we extend the font family and we extend the color, we can do the same thing for the other. Yes.
So if I want to change my phone to my system, I just click on
All
light
right.
now.
Yeah, so just like the way you can customize font family, colors, the same thing too, we can do it for the box shadow. But I will come back into this so that you see what is going on. Currently, Tailwind come with its own system for all the shadow. As you can see, we can mention shadow large, we can mention medium, and so forth like that. But you are going to see later on that in dark mode, the color of the shadow is actually different. There like that. So if you type this shadow here now, so I have shadow, as you can see, I can mention shadow slates, shadow whatever stuff like this. But I think let's do it from here. Don't let me do it from their system there. So, but we can actually customize. Assuming we need to use this in a lot in different places, instead of me mentioning this in every time here, I can just customize it directly from the tailwind here by mentioning the way I want the shadow to be. Just like the way you are doing your normal CSS. So the shadow, what do you want to apply there? You put everything in the code. So for the shadow, on the X is going to be 0, it's not moving. On the Y is going to be 0. And then what is the radius of the shadow? So it is going to be maybe 20 pixels. Then the next thing, what is the color of the shadow? And this one now is going to generate a custom shadow for us there. So later on I can start using this my shadow one anywhere that I need it in the system later on there like that. So here now, instead of me using this shadow large, I can just use it shadow then S whatever stuff that I put at that place. And once VS Code is done loading, we should have this thing as part of the option there for the shadow. But since this is the only place we need it, I'm going to create everything on this single line. Yeah, it's still loading. Tailwind is still loading. As you can see now, I have access to that shadow one. And as you can see, it's going to create the shadow that I want. Can you see? So this is my custom shadow. In case I want to use it anywhere else without doing the same thing again and again, I can just define it here. And whatever you put here, you can start using it anywhere you need that shadow. But I'm going to do it directly from here. I'm not going to do it like this. So I'm going to use their own, which is going to be shadow large by the, or I can use XL to increase the shadow more like that. So what else do I need? I need to change the color for the dark theme, because on the dark, they are not using the same thing. As you can see, we need to change that background when we are in dark mode. So let's go back into the application. This is what we have when we are in light mode. So that background needs to change when we are in dark mode. As you can see, the text will go to white and the background is going to be this one that we've already saved, which is this 1F, 1F. And what is the name that we use for that? So going back into our tailwind under the color, as you can see, 1F, 1F is being saved by this black. So which is what we need to use as the background color when we are in dark mode. So, and you know how to do the dark. Enter the dark like this, and BG is going to be app black 2 like this. So save. Then going back to the page, we should now have the color. So when we're in light, it's going to use light or white background, and once we go to the dark, it's going to use this one like that. Again, I think it's rounded at the edge. Yeah, it's rounded at the edge. Let me click out. Yeah, it's actually rounded. So let me see. Border radius is 1 rem, and I think that's XL. So going back to that place, then we can just use our rounded. That's what is going to give us border radius. So for the large, this is not what so it is 2XL. So this is what is going to give us 1 rem, and as you can see, it has given us what we want there. And again, I want this thing to have a minimum width, because our width is not what I want. So the minimum width is going to be, let me go to the box, because with Figma, just click on the element, you are going to see all the sizes. You don't need to do any guess. Click on the element, they are going to tell you. As you can see, the element is having this width of 11.43 whatever stuff. So I'm going to copy it, go into Tailwind like that, and create a custom value. So our minimum width of this box is going to be this around 183 pixels like that, which we are using rem. And once it gets to the screen, as you can see, it's showing already. But the thing is going outside of the screen because we've not really talked to it how it is going to be positioned in its parent. So I want it to be laid out to the right side, because right now it looks like it's sticking to the left side, but that's not what I want. So I can just use left, maybe around 2 like this, which is going to be from the left, or not left, right. So from the right, I want it to have a space of around this 0.5. And once I save, as you can see, it's now starting from the right and moving towards the left. If you want it to be at the center, you know what you can do there. The left will be 50, then you transform it back to the center. But let me see what is going on from the original design. Okay, I think it's aligned to the left. And this is something that we are missing. We are missing this arrow inside the button, which we are going to add soon there. So by the right, it's just going to be 0. So let us stick it to the right. And what is the right is it using? Is using the right of its parent. So wherever the parent is, that's what is going to use at the right. Again too, we did not talk about the top. It's just been positioned anyhow. So from the top, I want it to be around that 101 or 110% like this. So what is 0? 0% is where the parent is. Let me put the background of the parent so that you can see what is going on. So BG should be red 500 like this. So you are going to see the parent. As you can see, this is where the parent is. So this is the top of the parent, while this is the bottom of the parent. So this is 0%, and the bottom side is the 100% when you are moving from the top. So if I use 0%, it's going to go to the top of the parent. And if I use 100%, it's going to go to the bottom like this of the parent. But I want it to come down a little bit. So that's why I'm adding 10% to it, so that it will come down more, and I can see that 10% self is really small. So let me just use 120, and it's going to move it down a little bit like that. But we want this thing to happen like this. We want the top to be this 120% when the stuff is open. When it's not open, we want it to be outside of the screen because we don't want to see it. And in order for us to do that, we need to condition this our CSS. And in order for you to condition your CSS, you know that you need to convert it to JSX so that you can apply JavaScript inside it. So I'm going to paste all this in back. The only thing we just did is to move all this in like this. Let me put this in word wrap so that I can wrap to So what we did here is just to apply all the CSS. But this particular one top that we have here is not going to be like this every time. The only time it's going to have top of 120% is when this state here is true. When it's not true, we don't want that top to be that particular value. So here we need to check. We need to do some JavaScript checking. So if it is open, we want to do something like means apply some CSS. Then when it's not open, we want to apply some other CSS. So let me expand this thing very well. So when it is open, we want the top to be 120%. But when it is open, we want the top to be negative value. In Tailwind, you can use something like this to put a negative value, or you can type it yourself inside the box by putting a negative. So it's going to be, let me just use 200% here, which means it will be outside of the screen. Minus is going up, positive is coming down. So when you just say negative here minus 200%, this is going to be 100% here. But now I'm not saying it's going to be minus. So which means it's going outside of the screen here. So it's going up outside of the screen. And once this thing is saved and the state is changed to false, you see that it's not going to come outside. So once I save this stuff now, as you can see, it's out. But now if I click on this button, as you can see, it go up. Why is it going up? Because it has seen it that the state is now false. But the 200 that I use here is actually small. What I can do here is to, instead of even using percentage to calculate it based on the parent, I can just use 30 rem like this, because I know that this one is going to be outside of the screen, because the spacing from here to here is not up to 30 rem. So since we are not using 30 rem, what is that? 30 rem is just around that 480. So the spacing here to here is not up to that. So we know that it's going to go outside of the screen. So once we click, it will come down. If you click, it will go. So if it is open, it will use top of 120. If it's not open, then it will use this negative value, which is going to move it outside of the screen up, because negative is going up, positive is coming down. But if you look at it, it's actually changing fast. So we need to make sure that this thing, it's coming in slowly or going outside slowly. So in order for us to do that, we can transition. So what do you want to transition? You can transition any of the property you want, but I'm going to transition all, so that anytime any of the value is changing, it's not just going to change like that. As you can see now, it's not just moving out fast, it's coming out again too. It's still fast to me. We can change the duration, the time it's going to take. So I'm going to check half a second here. 500 milliseconds is the same thing as 0.5 seconds, like that. So save. So anytime you want to change, it's going to take half a second to move the value. And as you can see here now, it's not just going up and down instantly. It's moving within 0.5 seconds, not up to a second, half a second. And if you want it to be more than that, you can save it, but I think this one is okay like that. So now we have this. We need to add our click event on it so that we can change whatever that is here like that. By default, this is supposed to be 0 because I changed it to 2, so that's why it's showing the mono. Again, I don't need this background. It's just to see what is going on there, because the parent doesn't need to have the background. And I think this width is really much, but for now, let me go inside our UL and apply some CSS to it. So we need to display it as flex so that we can do some stuff. So flex column, to put them on top of each other. The gap should be 5, which is around 1.125. Yeah. So or let me use 1 rem as the gap in between them. Or we can go to the actual design and see the gap. So click on the text and move to the second one. As you can see, it's showing 1. So which means the gap in between each one of them is 1 rem, which is what I'm using currently right now. And again, as you can see, the shadow on the black is not working the way we want it to work. It's not showing the shadow correctly. Why is it not showing it? Is because the shadow by default is using black color, as you can see, and the background too is black. That's why it's not showing. On the light theme, it's going to show correctly, but on the dark theme, it's not even showing at all. And this shadow that I'm using itself is not following the shadow that is on the original design. As you can see, the shadow here is not the same thing as what we have there. So how can we get the shadow on this one? So if you click on it, as you can see, this is the code that we need for that box shadow. So now we can copy it. Since it's our own custom shadow, then we need to go into Tailwind so that we can create it as a value there. So instead of me using this value here like that, what I will just do is to replace it with the new value that I just copied from Figma there. With Figma, you have all the value that you need. Your own is just to go there and you see all the CSS. This is when it is light. So I'm going to call it this S light like that. Again, we need to copy the one for the dark theme because that one too is different. So coming back here, clicking on the element, you see that the shadow has changed. You see the same value, but the color are different. So copy this one too like that. Then going back into our Tailwind, I'm going to call this one S dark for shadow dark like that. So inside the quote, paste the value. This one too, close the space. So now save. Then in our component now, we can start using our shadow. So instead of us using the shadow we have here, so let me remove it. At the end here, what we can just do is then shadow. Then we are going to mention that our S light, because that's the name you use. Whatever name you use, Tailwind is going to pick it up. So I've changed that file. That's why it's still loading. And once it's done loading, you see that it's going to bring it out. As you can see, S light. That's what we want when we are in light theme, but we want to use something else when we are in dark theme. So going back into the light, as you can see now, is using the shadow that is coming from Figma there, like that. But we want to use something else when we're in dark mode. So here now, we're going to mention the dark. Then this one is going to be shadow, then S dark like this. So when we're in dark mode, it's going to, can you see now? So in dark mode, it's going to use the one for the dark, and in light mode, it's going to use the one for the light. And we get all this value from Figma. So with Figma or any professional designing tools that your designer is using there, once you have access to the file, just go there. You are going to see all the necessary value that you are going to be using for them. But assuming it is normal image, then you have to do it yourself by guessing the stuff. Again, we need to change the color based on the selected item, but that one is going to come from the li here. So we need to change the color. Is it changing? Yeah, so the color is changing already when we're in light or when we're in dark mode. But what we need to do is that the color or the text is to be different when it is selected. And again too, we can condition this one. So if the selected font is the same thing as item, what do we want to do? We want to change the color. And if it's not, we want to do something else. So when it is selected, so what we need to do is text the app, I think our purple here. Yeah. So save. And once we go back to the page, as you can see, any one of them that is selected, that's what is going to have that purple as the background there like that. So if I change the item at the top here now from 0 to 2, you see that the mono will be the one that will have the color, and it will update the item here. But by default, it's always going to be 0. The spacing at the edge is not following what I want, so let me check the spacing. So to check the spacing at the edge, click on the item, then move over to the edge. As you can see, this thing is telling us that the spacing should be around this 1.5 rem. And currently, what do I have there? So let me go back to the page. So what is the padding that I have around everything? Let me come back here. So where's okay? This is the padding that I'm using. And what am I using currently? I'm using 8 pixels. So that's not what's supposed to be there. So px is the padding on left and right, and py is the top and bottom. So top and bottom, or let me use the same thing for all. So I want everything to be 1.5 around there like that. So here now I can just use p directly, and I want to use 0.5. So let me scroll down and find the tailwind value for that. This is 1.5. Yeah, so this is the value that I need to use, p6. And once I save it, as you can see, the padding has been applied correctly. But this width that I'm using here, I think is really much for me, because I'm calculating the padding along with it. So let me just use 10 rem so that it reduces the width a little bit like that. So now we have the item, but it's not showing that there's something that is clickable. So here we need to come into this our stuff here by saying that it's going to be cursor or pointer there. So cursor pointer, let me bring it out, so that anytime you go to any one of them, it's going to show that they are clickable. Because the way it's showing before, it's not user experience. The experience there is not okay. Again, too, anytime it is over, we want to change the color to, so the text are purple, whether you are selected or you are not selected. Once it's over, we want to show you that you are actually on that particular element. But this thing is fast, so we can transition the stuff too, but we only want to transition the color like that. So anytime the color is changing, it's going to take this amount of seconds, which make it looks nice like this. But something supposed to happen here. Once we click on any one of them, it will update what we have here, and at the same time it will close the modal. So we need to create a function that is going to do that for us. So yeah, I'll be calling it change font like this. And what's it going to do? What it's going to do is to change the font. Don't forget, we need to apply some stuff on the parent later on. So here, change the font like that is going to be a function like this. And what is it going to do? It's going to receive whatever value that you want to use to update there. So here we are going to get the font like that, which is whatever you click on. Then what do? What we do is set selected like that is going to be font, and at the same time like this, we are going to toggle this our button. So because we need to, when it's open and you click on them and you click on it, it will set and it will close the stuff for us. First, let me set it to false so that you can see this in action. So copy this stuff, which is the function, go to the li. So anytime it is click like that, what do we want to do? What we want to do here is to call this function and you pass the item, because we need to pass the font that you are changing to. So the item is each one of the fonts that we want to change there. So when it's click, it will fire this arrow function so that we can be able to call this. Can't just pass this one directly, so that the way I'm passing this one is not the same way I'm passing this one. Why? This one I don't need to pass anything inside it, so I'm just passing the name. But this one, before it can be called, you need to pass the font that you want to click. And in React, you can't just call it directly like this. If you call it, React will just call this function even before you click on the stuff. That's not what we want. So we only want this thing to happen when the li is click. So, and that's why we need to pass it inside the arrow function, so that on click we see the arrow, and once we call the arrow, then the arrow will now perform what is inside it like this. So save, it will not be open by default, and once you click on this, it will come outside, and if I click on mono, as you can see, it will change it and it will go up. And if I open it again, it sees that the mono is the selected one. Click on this, it will change it to that new font or the text that you pick on there. And again, in dark mode, it's still going to work. So click on it, it come down, pick serif, and it's going to come outside. But there's something we are missing there that we did not add, which is this arrow here. So, and this arrow will either face up or face down based on whether this thing is open or not. So let's quickly add that one, and it's going to be inside this button. So it's going to be by the side of this span, which is going to be the image. And this image, where is it coming from? We should have all this thing inside our asset, and if it's not there, it's something that we can quickly get. And as you can see, nothing like that under this asset. So what we can do is to go back to the Figma, click on any of the assets that you need there like that. Then down here, as you can see, we can export it. So click on this download, and it's going to download the asset. So it is going to be under my download folder. I have this in another screen, but let me drag it here. So in order for us to see it, let me just go into my download folder, and as you can see, it's here. But I'm going to call it Chevron, like that. That's the name of the icon. So it's known as Chevron. But yeah, so now let me drag it into our project, open this thing, drag it into the images like that. And once it's there, then we can start using it. But I'm supposed to use the same name as the other so that it follow the other naming convention. So we have icon, then followed by the name of the icon. So this one too, I'm going to name it icon chevron like that. So reduce the width, then drag it into where we need it, and now we have icon chevron like that. So close this one, I don't need it again. Close the side. Then here we can point into this stuff here, because we know that it is inside public, inside images like that. So we don't need to mention public, because anytime you use slash something, it's going to reference public by default. So images, then the icon chevron like this .svg, and in case something is wrong with the link, we just want to use something like that. So I'm just going to call it arrow in case it's not showing on something happened with the links or the network of the user is not good. And as you can see, it's showing like that. But that's not the way it's going to be. So we need to apply the class for the button now, which is going to be flex items center, because we need to put the two of them center. Then I need to apply the gap maybe around these two in between them, and it's too small. Let me use 1 rem, which is this gap 4 like that. Now we have this, or we can go back into the Figma and see the spacing. So click on it. As you can see, it's 1 rem that is in between the two. And again, this thing is telling us that the font here is 700, because this thing is bold. The same thing here too, it's actually bold. All of them is bold. Why is it all of them is bold? So, but I will only bold this one, the one we have inside the button. So this one is going to be font bold like that, so that it shows that it's a bold font. And again, to this image, we need to apply some CSS on it. And what do we want to do? Yeah, we need to condition our style, because it's based on whether it is open or not. So if it is open, this thing is going to face somewhere, and if it's not open, it's going to face another side like that, because it's supposed to be changing based on whether it is open or not. And what am I saying here? So when it is open, the arrow will face down, because that's the way it's supposed to be. And when it's not open, the arrow is supposed to face up, but it's not changed in the actual design. And again, that's not the way it's supposed to be, or it might be like that, but I'm doing it in this way. When it's not open, it will face up, and when it is open, or when it is not open, it will face down, and when it is open, it will face up. And how can we do that? What we can do here is to rotate it to the opposite side, or you can scale it by inverting the element. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to invert the stuff by just using negative scale. So when you scale something, it can go up or it can go down. But if you use a negative value, it's going to invert the stuff. So if it's facing left before, it's now going to be facing right. The here now is facing down, but I can invert it so that it's face where I want it to be. And what do I want to do here? We have the one for the X, which is left and right, and we have the one for the top, which is what I need, which is the Y. So when it says scale Y of 0, it means the image will just maintain its original stuff. But right now it is dealing with when it is open. But let me do it for when it's not open, because the state is not open. let me be doing it with this one. So if I save it, as you can see, the scale has gone down, which means your scale is now 0. But instead of me doing like this, if I want, I can scale it up to 100. 100 is just 1. So you are scaling the stuff by 1. So if I save it, you are just dealing with the original size. But instead of me scaling it as 1, I can scale it up maybe around 150. 150 is 1.5. That's what is here, as you can see here. So which means you are increasing this thing by, as you can see, is increasing it by 50%. But I'm only doing it on the Y. If I want to do it for the two of them, X and Y, I can just do it like this. So it will scale the image by 50%. But that's not what I want. What I want to do is to invert the image. And how do I invert the image? What I can do here is to negate my scale, and at the same time, it's still going to be 100. Maintain the original size, but you are going to reverse whatever that is here. And as you can see now, it's now facing up. When the stuff is there, it will invert the value. So when you say the scale is -1, it's not scaling the stuff up or down. It's kind of mirroring the image. So if it is up before, it will change it to the other one, which is going to be down. Like if you are talking about Y. If you are talking about X, you are talking about left and right. But I'm talking about up and down. And when it is down, as you can see, it's going to do what I want it to do. But it's not doing anything because I'm selling the scale should be 0. But that's not what I want. I don't want to do anything when it is open. Just come down. So click on it. As you can see, it's always going to, when it is down or when it is open, it will invert the stuff, which is the icon there. And once we close it, then it will face up back. You don't need to do this, but you always see this in a lot online there, depending on what you are doing. And I think this is all for now for this side, except that the font is not actually changing on the page. Even though we are changing the stuff here, the font is not changing at all. And how can we do this thing? We can do the same thing that we did with this our color here, that we are updating the body. So when the body, we are toggling the class dark on it. And again too here, we can remove any other class apart from dark that is there, and at the same time we can now add whatever font that we want on the stuff. So how can we do that? Yeah, so we need to have a function, or we can do it directly here by just doing the document, then the body, then the class list like this. So we're going to remove whatever stuff that is there before. So dot remove, and then we now have the one that you put there. So what do we want to remove? We want to remove the one of 0, because I don't want to type this in myself. I know it will either be, no, we can't do this. We need to have a way to represent it, because this one now, the name is having space, and we cannot save it like this. It will not work. So we need to have another way of mapping all this item here into what we want to show on the body there. So the body class, so we are going to map it based on the one you click, and we need to have the index. So we need to have the index so that we can pick the correct one. You can see that this one is index 0, it will correspond to 0 here. Index 1, it will correspond to 1 here. Index 2, it will correspond to 2 here, and so forth like that. This is one way of doing it. We have numerous way of handling this stuff, but I'm doing simple stuff here like that. So we're going to have sans serif, because the class name can't have space. If they have space, that means they are different classes. So if you just go and save this one directly like that, sans is one class, serif is going to be another class on that body. But we want it to be the same class. So we need to put something there that is going to join the two texts together. But for the other one, they are just one text. So we can use the same name. Again here is going to be Bono. And as you can see, all of them, they are in small letter like that. So which means this our this in here, we need to pass the index to. Based on the index you send, we pick the correct one at this location here. So down here, where we are calling the function, so we need to pass the index to. And how can we get the index? Luckily for us, anytime you are dealing with map, you're always going to receive the index, and again we can pass it here. So the first one, which is this, we have index 0, which is going to match this. This is index 1, is going to match this because we arrange them in the same order. So first of all, what we want to do is to remove everything that is there before. Remove anything like the font that is there, because we don't know what is there before. We don't know whether the user click on serif before or they click on any other thing. We don't want to guess. So what we do first is to remove whatever that we have there before. So remove everything that is here. But instead of me calling it one by one like this, I can just look through it and it's going to work. But right now, I know that there are 3. That's why I'm doing it in this way. But in a normal sense, if I want to do it, what I will just do is to do this bottle class. Then for each one of them like this, I'm going to get it. And from there, what would I do? I will do document, then the body, then the class list like this, and remove. And what am I removing? Item. So this one is more perfect. And why is it perfect? I can quickly add some other font later on here, and I don't need to worry about the code down here. But with this method, if you update something here or you remove something, you have to come here and update it. But with this second one that I'm using here, what I'm doing is that go through everything that is here for each one of them, then just remove that class. And you know, remove, if it is here, it will remove it. If it's not there, it will just let it go. And this one is the simple form. Or you can do it like this if you know that this thing will always be the same thing. But if you change later on, it means you have to come to this line and update the code. So I'm going to leave this one to here so that it's going to be as a reference stuff. But if I'm working in a real sense, this is what I would do, because I don't like to type too much. I always want this thing to undo a lot of things for me. And if I modify the code here, anytime this thing is running, it will be working based on the updated value. But with this one, if the stuff changed from 2 or from 3 like this to 2, it means you have to come here to come and remove the one that you've removed here. But with this method, I don't need to do that. It will always do everything for me. Then after that, what we are going to do is the document, then the body, then the class like that. So the class list at this point, then .add, then we add the one based on the index. This AI, go back. So if you look at it, firstly remove everything that is there before there. Then once you remove it, then now add the one that is based on the index that you sent to us. With this now, we don't need to worry what is there before. Anyone the user click, it will clear whatever that is there before and it will update the stuff with the new one. So let me go to the elements, and as you can see right now, the class, nothing like that there. So open this stuff, click on serif. Can you see now? Sans serif has been added. So now if I click on it again, click on mono, as you can see, it will remove the one that is there before, then it will now add the one that you click on. It firstly check everything and remove them. Whether it's there or not, just go there, remove any one of them you can find it. Then once you are done removing it, then now add the one that we click. That's why we are doing the adding after. You have to remove first before you add. If you go and add and you now remove, it will still remove the new one that you add. So we remove everything that is there before without touching the dark, because I don't want to touch this dark. That's why I'm only focusing on what is inside the body class. So focus on these 3 items. If any one of them is there, when we click on another font, remove them first. Then once you remove it, then now add the new one that we click on based on that index. So this is index 0, which is going to correspond to the first one, index 1 and 2 and so forth like that, depending on the number of fonts that you have. So clicking on sans serif, it will add the sans serif on it. So clicking on serif, it will add the serif to the body. Then clicking on mono, then it's going to add the mono to it. Then based on these classes on our element in our CSS, we can now apply some tailoring based on that. So when the body is having that particular class, we want to do something. But if you look at what we did here, we are doing Laura, we are doing Inconsulator and so forth like that. But this is not what I want. What I want to do, so let me go back into the code. So when it is sans serif, so what's the font that is using? Is using Inter like that. So here, which is what is applying by default. So whether we have Inter or we have so sans serif like this. So what I want to do is to just, let me copy this one because I don't want to change it. So this one is going to be font Inter, which is what is even using by default. So you don't even need to do this one, which is what, because here I've already done it. So when there is no classes on it, this is what is used by default like that. But when there is a font for serif, we want to use something else. So what is the font for the serif? So let me go into the serif. So when it is using serif, So what, no, this is not where it is. So this is where it's supposed to be. So when it is using serif, so what is the name of the font? It is Laura. So now we need to apply the Laura. So serif, why is this E here? Serif. So again, when there is body for mono like that, we want to use this inconsolata like that. So which means on the page, it is going to be applying the, can you say it has changed? So when it is mono, it will see the class on the body, and once you see the class on the body, as you can see, it will pick the font for the inconsolata that we set up. So if you click on this sans serif, then it will see sans serif, as you can see, it will pick Inter. And again, when we click on serif, it will see the class serif on the body, and it's going to pick Laura. And now we've set up our font based on what we have here. So as you can see, the search box, the font is different from what we had before. So when you click on serif, or let me reload the page so that it go back to the normal, which is going to be sans serif by default. This is the font because it's using Inter by default. Whether that thing is there or is not there, it's using Inter by default. That's the same thing as sans serif. But now if you change it to serif, as you can see, the stop, everything has changed to Laura. And since it has changed to Laura, all the font of the page too has changed. Again, if I click on mono, as you can see, now it will switch because it's seeing the class mono on the body. It will switch it to this inconsolata. And all this thing, we set them up when we are doing the setting in our Tailwind file there. So going back into the Tailwind file, we set up all our custom fonts. So when we mention Laura, this is what we want. When we mention Inter, this is what we want. When we mention inconsolata, this is what we want. And everything here too, we are loading it. As you can see, we are loading them from the file. So anytime we are using font family of Inter, this is what it will use. Anytime we are using font family of this inconsolata, this is where we are going to get the font. Anytime we are using font of Laura, this is where it's going to get the value. Now we are connecting them together so that it works the way it's supposed to work. And let me go back to the normal font. Here in the dark mode, again open it. We have this our drop down, and every font has changed because we are only updating the font inside the body. We are not updating it anywhere in our code. We are only doing it in this index, and it's going to apply everything, because once you change anything on the body and you don't do it in any of the child, they will be checking or they will be using whatever the body is using by default. So since we are applying the font family on the body and we did not change it anywhere else in any of the child, they will pick whatever the parent or that body is using. So sans serif, it go back to that sans serif font. Again, serif, it will see the CSS that there is a class serif on it, and it will pick this font because it's always going to override the other one that we have there. Again, click on mono, then it's going to pick the mono like that. And this is where I'll be stopping because I think this is not going to take time, but it's already 58 minutes already. So in our next class, we are going to be working on the search box. So in the next class, we are going to be working on the search box. Then when we are done with the search box, that's where we now move into the API connection so that we can connect to the API, and whatever the user type in the box, we are going to fetch it, show the loading state when that stuff is still loading. Again, play the audio if that thing is returning audio. If it's not returning audio, this one will not show. But if it's returning audio, it will show, and the user can click on it to play the sound. And those are the stuff we are going to be working in the coming classes there. So this is where I'll be stopping.